Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Dan Goodstein, seasoned marketing executive, sales leader, consultant, advisory board member, and he's also a podcast host like me. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Thanks for having me. Good to be with you, AJ.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for joining us. First thing, Dan, we'll be talking about, about work and workplaces and the future of work. How exactly these are going to shape up now, coming in the coming future, in the backdrop of all this digital transformation that's happening. Now, as the president of the Institute for Robotic Process Automation and Artificial Intelligence, Dan, and also Digital Enterprise Institute, how do you see our work and workplaces changing in the coming days as you see it? How do you see it? Let's start with this thing.
Yeah, there's certainly a massive shift going on, right? I mean, when we launched ERPA AI to focus on automation and kind of artificial intelligence, we came out of the outsourcing world. We had a previous association called the Outsourcing Institute, so we were very kind of in tune with the job, the workforce, and people's perspectives of it. And for the first few years, every conversation was about how this technology is going to take jobs and it's risky and it's dangerous and all these types of things. And then the pandemic happens, and you have this resignation, this great resignation thing happening where a lot of the people that were concerned about their jobs being taken by technology just left the workforce to the tune of a couple million by some estimates. So you have that kind of dynamic. And now the most recent wave is layoffs. You've seen tech companies in particular, layoff after layoff. It's difficult to see the news without seeing another large tech firm doing massive layoffs. So there is a bit of a reshuffling happening as far as people in the workforce, their skill sets, what types of jobs they are willing to do, and now technology getting to a point where a lot of the jobs that people were doing pre-pandemic didn't really need to be done by people. And so, we're seeing organizations becoming more comfortable with looking at technology like automation and AI to augment or replace some of the more manual, repetitive types of jobs.
Right, Dan. So let's look at the scenario from two perspectives. One is the individual worker, a simple person who goes to office, does his work, and comes back. So how is that going to change? And second thing is the type of workplace that it come in. Will they become smaller? Will they become bigger? Will the change be very different? Will it all move towards more offices which will be much more made by 3D printing in smaller cubicles? How do you see that? One is that part. And the third is the work culture. How will that change? How will people look at employees? Will they be just much more in terms of pure numbers? As you said, what led to great resignation? People wanted that work-life balance. They wanted life for themselves. So that was that point where it came.
Yeah.
And the type of technology which will seep into our workplaces that will determine how I work, you work, and how the workplaces will look. So everything in the backdrop of the type of technology that will come up. Several things at the same time, but since they are so interrelated, Dan, and so that you can respond them at your own pace and the way you want to.
Yeah, I think you got like 3 or 4 shows in that question. Big questions, but you're right. I think what drove this is largely people being unhappy with their jobs, right? Being unhappy with their employers, right? And so in the old kind of paradigm of, I'm in the office, you're immersed with the company, you're on the company's time. Whether you clock in or not, you're in an office surrounded by other people that are working for that company, with that company. And then all of a sudden, people are thrown into, work from home, whether they liked it or not. And so now people are saying, wait a second, I like seeing my kids. I like not being on a plane 47 weeks out of the year. I like taking a walk outside between meetings, right? I can't do that in the office. And so why should I go back? And oh, by the way, I kind of hate my job. I kind of hate my employer. I don't think my employer really is that great to me. So people started kind of having this realization. And then you see, even before the pandemic, but it was accelerated during the pandemic, you see this idea of sort of the gig economy, right? It's made popular by the Ubers of the world, but really, in reality, it was happening before the pandemic and massively increased during the pandemic, where people had side hustles, people had other jobs that they were doing, consulting work that they were doing. And so, if they're not sitting in a company office, it's a little easier to kind of multitask or bounce back and forth between different things, different jobs. And so I think, what's happened is there's less employee loyalty now, right? And I think it's been a long time coming, right? Because the reality is many companies out there, have not been as loyal to their employees as they were, in the 70s and the 80s, right? And now it's kind of, the employees are waking up and saying, I don't need to spend 60 hours working for one company, right? Let me kind of spread it around and live this kind of, the old term was this work-life balance, right? You can do that now in a much easier way than you could do before. So I think you're seeing that's why you're seeing resistance in, people going back to the office, despite, Disney this week and other companies, forcing people to come back to work. I think it'll settle. I think it'll settle around a sort of hybrid, work environment where people go in to collaborate, go into the office to have meetings, but where they largely do their normal day-to-day stuff at home. And so, the office culture will change. I think those days of just sitting in a cubicle are, for most jobs, certainly knowledge jobs, is gone. And I think you're going to see kind of smaller, day-to-day offices, but, more get-togethers, more, what we recommend, organizations to do is, get people together, even if just for social element, to create that connectivity and that stickiness that we've kind of lost during the pandemic with people, so that there is a bond to, between employees and each other, employees and the company. But if you're an employer, you got to look at this and say, how can I make it advantageous for my employees to spend all or most of their time working on my work instead of moonlighting and doing other things. Part of that is in the culture, and in providing, resources and those sorts of things to help them. The other is in the type of work that they're doing, which goes back to the automation and digital transformation thing, right? Now that employees are less happy with their jobs, I think it's easier for them to have a conversation with employers to say, how can we do this job differently? How can we get this job done differently? And oh, by the way, if I have this AI assistant working with me alongside me, if I can get my work done in 20 hours a week, what do you care as the company, right? You get the same productivity out of less hours and less cost, because that's maybe one less employee you need to hire.
Right, Dan. In fact, talking of moonlighting, recently there was a big debate about moonlighting. As you know, one particular company fired a lot of people for this, and there was a huge debate that some people were of the view that the company owns only 8 hours of my work and rest what I do. So that is everybody has their own view on this. There's no right or wrong. Everybody will look at it, but these are the type of debates that I guess will be much more happening everywhere. At least in India, it really made a lot of noise. Now let's look at purely from the basic level. How does an employee prepare for the future? How does he know? Because you see, even tech firms are facing that thing. They are not able to anticipate. Till yesterday, even Google was working as a very big search engine. Then suddenly ChatGPT comes in and the whole landscape changes. Now ChatGPT is coming out with a professional plan. I just read it today, and they have sent out emails that people can sign up for the wait list. And then there is again the news that Microsoft will integrate ChatGPT into its whole Office suite, and that
Right.
is where the whole, and maybe also on Bing. So a lot of shift will happen. So you see, everybody, even in AI space, a lot of companies who are providing the similar services, all those a copywriting and all that stuff, suddenly will find it difficult to deal with the situation or might find it challenging. In the same way, when tech firms are facing this issue, how does an simple employee, anticipate the future? How does he know what is his future? How does he prepare for this? What can you advise? How he should look at the situation and be a step ahead, so that he still is relevant in terms of his work, in terms of his skill, and still has a way of a good way that he can maintain his work and life balance.
Yeah, well, I think the first that you alluded to is to recognize that what I'm doing today is probably not what I'm going to be doing in 5 years, right? That wasn't the case for our fathers and our grandfathers, right?
Right.
They worked in a job their entire lives, probably in the same exact job or very close to it. With some maybe upward mobility. Today, those days are gone, and so I think the onus is back now. If we are going to live in a world where there's less employee loyalty and you may have multiple gigs or multiple clients or multiple employers, I think the onus is now on the employee to say, I've got to educate myself. I can't rely on the company educating me, training me, finding the next job for me, and retaining me forever, right? I need to be investing in my own personal development and my own skills. So first of all, that's recognition of, like I said, the chances of you doing the same job you're doing today in 5 years, especially if you're in anything in the technology field, but really any industry, right? Because every industry is being hit by technology. So the first is to recognize that and kind of seek that out. What's great about the Chat GPT, thing that's really pumped up in the last couple months is that it's making AI accessible to individuals in a way that really wasn't out there before, right? I said on my podcast last week, we're used to our smart speakers and things like that. This promise of AI that really didn't develop fully as individuals or consumers. We hear about algorithms making our lives better and making the websites that we visit smarter, but it really hasn't visibly hit us as consumers yet. Now you can go to these ChatGPT, and Google's just accelerated the launch of theirs, as you alluded to, Google Muse, and you can play with it and you can see how it works. And so I encourage anybody in a job like this to do that, to become familiar with the capabilities of these things, because I think that what's going to happen is that the jobs won't be initially replaced; they'll change, and so you're not going to lose your job to the AI. You're going to lose your job to the person who knows how to implement that AI, who knows how to use that AI and apply what comes out of that. And so we're not in a contrary to what the media and the movies kind of project, there's a big difference between no AI and completely artificial intelligence. AI is a little bit of a misnomer, right? And so we're somewhere in between. And for the foreseeable future, we need people that can work with AI, ask it the right questions, apply it appropriately, and having some experience and expertise in whatever field you're in does make a big deal, is a big difference for how those things are implemented.
So is there a way that you suggest to people that they can prepare? Is it your education suddenly which got you your present job, or maybe your skill set, suddenly you find that it is of no use? How do you prepare? Should you reskill at the same time? Should you start going for a passive income? Should you move something beyond technology, which maybe some farming stuff, or anything which is much more related to the basic uh, relevance that is in our lives? Maybe that can keep you at still earning something in technology. You see, crypto was the name just some time back, and suddenly everybody has stopped talking about it with all those scams and scandals that we read about. And then even in other industries, Dan, if you look, even in automobile industry, suddenly a lot of talk is now on electric vehicles. So there is whole debate about about fossil fuels and the new generation. They say that's the electric vehicle, and a lot of politics has also come in, but that we will keep aside at the moment. Amidst all these things, other sectors also, as you deal with a lot of emerging technologies, a lot emerging technology trends, automation, a lot of automation is coming, and you people know about it, deal about it, talk about it. Robotics is there. So one fine morning, an employee walks into his workplace and he finds instead of him there is a robot sitting in his workplace. Is that what an employee will see in the future? Is there a way he still becomes relevant, still is able to bring food on his table?
Yeah, yeah. There's that old expression: if you can't beat them, join them. I would say before your company forces an AI on you that might take your job, I would bring it in yourself. I'd bring it in. I'd start working with it. I'd talk about, one of the paradigms that, isn't talked about a lot. There's always this, oversimplified binary way of looking at things where it's, hey, this is my job. Here's technology. It's going to replace it, right? The reality is some of the more interesting services and technologies that are out there are actually kind of human machine collaboration. And right, so there's this idea of, originally it was a bot for every employee, or maybe an AI assistant for every employee. But I would say, again, get in from the ground level before it's forced upon you and you're the dinosaur that can't keep up. Do it now. Recommend it to your boss now. Play around with it now, even if you do it on the side. How do you make your job better? Because it's coming regardless. You could certainly go do some farming and things to balance your life out, but technology is not going away. It's not slowing down. It's accelerating. And while I don't think, I don't think anybody can really predict whether, Bitcoin will be around in 10 years or not. The concepts behind it, crypto will be here, blockchain will be here, right? So, I think it's less about, training yourself in a specific tool or specific, piece of software, and more about understanding the capabilities, understanding the, what can be done with it. I remember before I kind of dropped out of, I didn't drop out, but before I dropped out of the tech space, when I went to school originally for computer science, and then I shifted to more the business side of tech. I remember complaining to one of my professors that they were teaching us a programming language that was outdated, and and her response was, very much around, the language may change, but the concepts will remain the same. The principles will remain the same. And I, the arrogant young version of myself, kind of scoffed at that. But, all these years later, I realized, she was right. And I'm not programming these days, but, the foundational or the fundamental, things that I learned then are still applicable in my life now, where I'm more on the business side of technology, but it's still relevant, right?
Okay. And looking at it from the company's point of view, from workplaces or small businesses and all that stuff, you talk of automation, digital transformation. How do they keep pace with this? How do they bring in the technology or digital transformation or automation in their firms amidst all these changes that is happening so fast?
Yeah.
How do they make sure that it's still human, or human for customers, as well as they are keeping pace with enough latest technology to meet to be competitive in the market. How, what sort of a trend do you see? What is important right now? What is it that they should be prepared for in the coming days?
Well, once again, I'll start with the philosophy, right? The philosophy for a long time was, hey, all that advanced transformational stuff is nice and exciting, but it's also complicated, and we have a business to run today, and so a lot of organizations were very resistant to it. When we did our first ever digital transformation event in New York, this is probably 7-8 years ago now. I remember an executive from a large investment bank basically saying, "This is all interesting, but I've got a day job," right? And so, that was the mentality for a long time. And then I think, again, you had the pandemic really accelerated the inevitable, where all of a sudden these companies are playing catch up. They weren't ready to work remotely. They weren't ready to work in this new paradigm. They weren't expecting the customer shift. Most banks couldn't process a new account online, and there's thousands of examples like that. The IRS in the U.S. couldn't figure out how much money people made, and so they couldn't do the stimulus payments that were promised by the administration at the time. So there's lots and lots of examples, and now I think there's this fork in the road for a lot of companies that have seen what's happened. They realize they haven't invested enough in technology or just in changing and transforming their processes and the way that they do things to try to be more digital centric, and compete with some of these digital native companies that are really, killing them. And I tell you, a lot of companies are still resistant to the change. They're still set up wrong. Their incentives are wrong. Their policies are wrong. And so what's happening is, while an executive might get up at a board meeting or in an interview and say, yeah, we're committed to transformation, the people underneath them are not really aligned with that goal. And so, we're still seeing a lot. You see it a lot in the retail space right now, where, more and more large retailers are closing because they're still not adapting. So my advice is, the change is already here. If you're not already on the journey, you're in trouble. You got to catch up. You need to invest. I think what you're going to see coming out of the recent news around, Southwest Airlines in the U.S. and all the issues that they've had. I mean, they're talking about $800 million in losses due to the last couple months, and that's not including any tech investments that they're going to have to make, right? So it's eventually going to cost you, right? And that's an operational thing. The other part of your question is, in this economy, brand loyalty is at an all-time low. Consumers will move on for convenience and experience. And so, you need to use the automation and the AI and whatever other technologies come out next to make that experience better and probably quicker. The days of, hey, I don't want to do business with a company where I can't pick up the phone and call somebody, I think those days are gone, right? I mean, I can't tell you the last time I had a good experience calling an 800 number, right? It's not a good experience, actually a bad experience. I would have preferred an AI that could actually solve my problem in 3 minutes versus speaking to a person. So I think that paradigm has shifted. I think the companies that are winning right now get that and are making that shift. And I think in the next couple of years, you're going to, more and more do business with companies that make it easier to do business with you than a company that's got a big brand that you've been, dealing with for a long time.
Okay. Because you talked about that it's but sometimes it is easier to deal with a bot than a human. But a lot of people say that I would rather want to talk to a human. Well, that's different ways people look at it. I wanted to ask you that how do you see in the next couple of years, coming future, is that will our life, human lives, revolve around technology, or technology will revolve around humans? How do you see that? Because as you said, technology is not going to go away, and we do need technology for our existence. Now that's the way we are. How do you see it? Where is the human amidst all these things?
It's a great question. I think if I don't know if I've ever been asked that question. I think if you look at it now, we're revolving around technology, right? I mean, there's more and more people that are being, consumed by social media platforms. There's some really interesting research out there that I can find and send you the link, or your readers the link, about how social media is actually changing our brain chemistry, changing our personalities, and no surprise, it's changing our attention spans. And so I think we've as a society, we've really been drawn to that. We've been kind of chasing technology for the sake of technology. And so it's very difficult to live life without technology being intrusive, getting notifications, in 40 different places all the time. So I think that's where we are today. And there's sort of siloed benefits, right? Certain apps, certain services provide certain benefits, but they're not really integrated. So I've got to have 47 apps on my phone to do the things that I want to do and get through the day. I think it will change. And I think part of that is people being resistant, issues around privacy and cybersecurity. There's some obstacles, there's some hurdles, concerns about AI and its potential. There's some hurdles that we have to get through. But I think ultimately the nirvana that I see and that I, hope for is where we kind of go back to the lead and technology just supports us. Right. And so, we don't have to, spend 45 minutes researching an app to help us solve a problem. You kind of have this assistant that already knows what your problem is and has already done the work for you. And if we can get to that level, then technology really becomes an enabler and fulfills the promise that, we've all been told for years and years and years around AI, that it's going to make our lives easier, and that it'll actually free up our time where we can focus on more human things. We can go do some farming or whatever else that we like to do.
Right.
And the technology will run the operational back office parts of our lives for us. That's what I'm hoping for.
Right, Dan. Let the future unfold. Let us also try and be as much prepared for it as possible. But it's interesting times that we live in. But tell us about, amidst all this interesting time, tell us also about your interesting podcast, the Digital Leader Show.
Yeah, we launched that in the spring of last year. A lot of what we do as an association is provide education, networking, and advice to executives all around automation, AI, digital transformation, outsourcing, and sales and marketing. And so, we decided to launch that. The gentleman I do that with is a researcher, an author, an educator, and so we overlap in some areas, but have differing opinions. I come from a business technology perspective. He comes at it more from a business and academic and consulting perspective. And so, as I mentioned before we went live, we would have these kind of weekly conversations about what was happening in the industry, what was important for members to really know about, from a standpoint of technology, but also, news and debates about, take AI, for example, or other technologies. And after doing it for a few weeks, we said, hey, maybe it would benefit somebody to hear our conversation or participate in our discussion and debate. And so we decided to really just take that informal conversation we were doing on Zoom each week and make it live. And it's been a really fun show because we're not talking about any particular technology or any particular company. We're really just talking about the convergence or the intersection of business, technology, and really the humanities. And the goal is to make the viewers a better digital leader for anybody who is in a leadership position in technology, digital transformation. So it's one of the things we do. We have some other content and events and things that are more focused on automation or AI. or sales and marketing. But it's a fun show if you want to kind of get a sense of what's happening in the world of business and tech.
And where can people hear it, see it? It's also on video, I guess.
Yeah, so we push it out to YouTube. So the YouTube channel is IRPA AI, IRPA AI. The website is irpaai.com. And we're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter. If you go to irpaai.com and you sign up there, you'll get that as well as some of the other content that we put out to members each week.
Right. And what's the best way to connect with you if people want to do that? You are the go-to market expert, about digital transformation, about, automation. People want to take your help. How do they do that?
Yeah, go to irpaai.com. There's a chat right there, or reach out to me directly. I'm on LinkedIn, Daniel Goodstein, and on Twitter at Dan Goodstein. Happy to chat. Happy to give. We do a lot of coaching and advice, and I'm happy to jump on the phone with anybody and just chat and try to point you in the right direction.
Right. My last question to you, Dan, is that you have so much technology around you. You are the president of IRPA AI. You are doing a podcast on digital leader and all that stuff. You are digital transformation evangelist. You are living in the present times. You talk of technology all the time. How do you disconnect from technology and lead your own life? How are you able to do that when you are able to be yourself? How do you be yourself with your friends, with the people who care for you, who you care for? So I ask this question so that people get some idea how they can follow that particular principle.
Yeah. If you would have asked me about a year ago, I would have said I don't. But it's part of my personal quest over the last year and a half to find the. I don't know if I like the term work-life balance, but I haven't thought of a better term yet. For me, and I think this is probably relatable to anybody who's even in the workforce, right? Especially now where on one hand maybe you're not going to the office, but on the other hand you're asked to be accessible 24 hours a day. So I think what I've done is I've put some boundaries in place. There's certain times a day where I won't even keep my phone on me. It's very difficult. I've disabled a lot of notifications on my phone and on my computer. There's certain things that I will keep on my computer so that when I'm in work mode I get notifications, but on my phone I've disabled the notifications so that I can kind of engage with it when I want to, not when Google decides that I should. I've deleted Facebook is one of those. I've removed a lot of social media apps from my phone, and so I have kind of times of day that I'll do that in my work life. But yeah, a lot of kind of just putting boundaries in place. And then just personal time. I've added a long walk to my day every day, and so I disconnect, or I kind of disconnect and listen to non-work related podcasts and audiobooks and things like that, and just try to be one with something that is not technology. And a funny thing that happens is, when you come back to it, you're actually better. You're actually more refreshed. Right. You're more on. You can do what one of the authors I follow says, deeper. You can do deeper work because you're not mentally burnt out.
Right, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us. On this note, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed once again.
Thanks, AJ. Take care.